Um, I really get motivated when I see us all stand up, almost semi at attention. Some of us are slouching, but for the most part, we got our chest out, and we're just singing to God. It's nothing like spiritual, moral men, Christian men. All right, not in a village people kind of way, but men. Okay, you guys are too young to even know what that is. Anyway. Okay, today I'm gonna try to break this down into like sections. We're going over Joshua, and Joshua is really important to me because he was a warrior. And I spent a great deal, most of my life, either training for or looking forward to conflict, war. Okay, Marine Corps kind of grinds that into your heart and your soul and your mind. Get ready to hook people up, and not in a good way. And Joshua did a lot of that in the promised land. But first, I want to kind of break it down into like, you can learn a lot from our parents, kind of shape who you are. Maybe if you have, a good dad, okay, because men are important. We kind of shape our sons. I don't have any, I don't know why I'm speaking on that, but we kind of that, or you can be shaped by a mentor. Everybody who taught me leadership in the Marine Corps was a mentor of mine. So we're going to go over, first of all, we're going to go over Moses just briefly, because we all know the story, because he was Joshua's mentor. He would have seen, he would have stood at Moses' side while Moses made good and bad decisions. Then from there, we're going to go over Joshua and some of his strengths and some of his shortcomings. And then the people of Israel, because this is important, because you're going to see that these were not Delta Force, Navy SEAL kind of individuals when they went into the promised land. They were anything but, okay? They spent a great deal of their time grumbling, complaining, whining. These are not the people that you think would crush skulls, exactly, crush skulls and take names. So I think it's important that we understand who the people of Israel were as well. And then we're going to actually dig into Joshua itself and look at some of the cities of obviously Jericho. And then we're going to go into Ai and how Joshua went in there and started slashing and cutting throats as well. Okay. All right. So first, we're going to start off with Moses. We all know the story. You just write these down. Okay. As far as going back to Exodus, it's going to be 16. And it talks about when he was 2 months old, about how his mom hit him, which took a great deal of courage. He was he was a handsome child. Then, of course, when she couldn't hold on to him anymore, she put him in a wicket basket, and we all know the story there. And then the daughter, his sister, bamboozled her into actually allowing Moses' own mother to breastfeed him, okay, until he was of age. And then, of course, then he's taken into the king's court. Moses would have had a pretty good childhood, considering that he was abandoned. Not really abandoned, but there was a king's edit at the time. But he would have been in the king's court. He'd have learned some martial skills. He'd had a pretty good life, in contrast to Joshua, who was born a Hebrew slave, who didn't have the education that Moses would have had. We're going to look at now at some of Moses's. Hold on, guys. Let me get this right here. All right. We're going to look at some of the things when you look at your leader and he's your mentor. Some of the things that Joshua would have seen or heard about in this case. You know about Moses, and of course, he sees that one of his fellow Hebrews is getting, just beat like Kunta Kinte. And so he looks this way and that way, and then he goes out there and he hooks him up, and not in a good way. That takes a great deal of passion. So Moses was a man that had a pretty explosive temper. All right. So as a leader, do you want this guy? Do you want to follow his lead? And you'll see Joshua, for the most part, didn't. He wasn't a very volatile man. He just was determined to do the will of God. You also see his passion when it comes to, the tablets. He was up on the mountaintop and he's giving the tablets, written by the finger of God. And he gets upset at the Hebrews, once again, the Israelites, and he breaks the tablets in half and crushes them and things of that nature. Definitely Joshua would have been standing by his side when he saw that as well. Okay. And then, of course, last but not least is Moses, the reason why he didn't go into the promised land, because of his volatile temper. He was told to speak to the rock, and the rock would give water. But what did Moses do? Okay, because he was angry at the grumbling and griping of the Israelites. He took that staff and he hit it twice. And because of his anger, he wouldn't be allowed to go into the promised land. And you have to ask yourself, as I was going through this and I was reading this, what do I do in my own personal life that keeps me from getting God's promises? Okay, what are some of the things that I do in my life, certain sins, that impurities that I won't let go of that keep me from God's promises? God didn't spare Moses. He won't spare us. A huge fear of mine, and I'm not saying that Alex by no means is this a biblical thing, but it's like a fear that, I'll get to heaven or whatever. All right. And I'll be glad that I'm there, and, I'll be welcomed and everything like that, hopefully by Paul. And, he'll be, hey, Preston, great job. Then he'll show me the man of God I could have been. Yeah. He'll show me up there, hey, Preston, you did a great job, but here's what you could have done for God, and how it's going to make me and how it's going to make me feel. So Moses' own temper, he's the mentor of Joshua. His own temper is what kept him out of the promised land. And then we look at his compassion for his people. Once again, Moses could have allowed that guy to continue to get beat. He could have turned his back completely on the Jewish people and continued to live the life of Riley as the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter, but he didn't do it. He had great compassion for his people, for his tribe. Exodus 32, verse 9, you don't have to go there, I'll read it. When they're up on a mountain and everyone's down there, and Moses and Joshua are gone for quite a while, the people begin to rebel, which is their nature. And God, obviously sees this, and he says, I have seen these people, and they are stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. Now for me, I'd be like, that sounds like a pretty good plan. They've been griping since we left the promised land, man. I mean, they're always griping. So go ahead and hook them up, but not in a good way. But instead, what did Moses do? He got on his face. He got on his face and he begged God to spare his people. Moses, his mentor of Joshua, also had plenty of excuses of why he could not do what he was told to do. Joshua, as we're going to see when we get into the book of, when we get actually into Joshua, you'll see that Joshua was not a man of excuses. He was told by God to do something and he did it. But Moses had plenty of excuses. In Exodus 3:13, I don't have the answers, by whom have you come and what's his name when he goes to the people? Another excuse he had is, people won't believe me, and after, killing the Egyptian, he saw what happened when he went to break up 2 Hebrews. And they said, hey, you're going to, kill us like you did the Egyptian. These are not very grateful people. So he also, his last one, of course, is the one I use all the time. The one that I tell Alex probably the most, send somebody else, because I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. But we're called from God to do his will. We're going to go into Joshua and who he was. He was born Hoshea. Am I saying that word right? Hoshea, which means salvation. He was the son of Nun of the tribe of Ephraim. He was born into Egypt as a Hebrew slave and served as aide to Moses during those 40 years. So he'd have been privy to this. Anybody here ever been in the military? Okay, anybody here in business? Or, anybody here been mentored by somebody? Okay, so think about it. All right, this is your mentor, Moses, and you would have seen him do all these things. Joshua, Some of his strengths was, he was on hand when Moses needed to meet with the Lord. So he'd been outside the tent as his mentors in there talking directly to God. So he would have known that the things that Moses did and said were from God. Only Joshua was allowed to come with Moses on the mountain. All right. And I believe God knows the end from the beginning. So he knows what he's going to do before man knows. So he knows he's going to prepare. Moses is going to prepare Joshua to take his people into the promised land. For 40 days, Moses and Joshua were alone and isolated from the rest of Israel. So it's just Moses and it's just Joshua, and hopefully Moses passing on things to Joshua about what he wants him to do. Moses, of course, probably doesn't know that he's not going to ever see the promised land. And then Joshua was actually jealous for Moses. There were two men that used to prophesy, Eldad and Medad. And Joshua felt that only Moses should be allowed to actually prophesy. So you see who Moses was. You see who Joshua was. And now we're going to look at the people of Israel. And what sets Israel apart, as I was reading this, was just it didn't take very long for these people to, regardless of what miracles in their lives, to completely turn from God. Not long at all. In fact, Exodus 16 only took 2 months and 15 days. People started grumbling, saying, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. Well, that's a lie. Nobody's feeding their slaves very good. It's a lie. It's this is after, somebody splits the Red Sea for me. I'm pretty much, and I walk across on dry ground. He's got my vote. I'm going with this guy right here for the rest of my life. Okay. I'm happy if the Steelers win. So if I'm walking on dry ground and this guy is split the Red Sea, I'm probably not griping about food. He's got some kind of plan, maybe a few rabbits or something, but I'm not going to complain. So we know that they're ungrateful people, just ungrateful. You go further down when they were told to gather bread, and we know the story, only get enough for what you need, You always got a greedy guy, and it's usually myself, but we always get a greedy person who's going to hold on to manna, hold on bread, and of course, what happened? We'll talk about that later. But you're holding on to something, you're holding on to manna, and then of course in the morning, it's all filled with maggots and rotting and things of that nature. It's not a very good morning snack. And so they can't be trusted to follow simple directions. Okay. Now remember, this is the army of God getting ready to go into the promised land. Okay. All right. They're ungrateful. They can't follow simple orders and directions. Exodus 17, verse 3, more grumbling. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? Was it to make our children and our livestock die of thirst here in the desert? Yeah, sure. That's why I did all that. Think about it. It makes no sense. It's absurd. All right. Even a jarhead like me would probably figure out, no, I don't think he split the Red Sea, did that whole thing with the snake and the staff, just to drag me out here in the desert to die of thirst. So they're rebellious people. So they're ungrateful. They can't follow simple directions and orders. They're always complaining and they're rebellious. And he's expected, Joshua is, to take these people into the promised land and just wreak havoc. I would be crying in my beer. Okay. I just look at these people on a daily basis and be like, for the love of John, look at who I got to take into the promised land. Anybody here ever play team sports? Okay. Anybody play team sport? First slide, please. First slide, you guys can do. All right. That's right there is my team. Come on, bro. I'm the far guy over on your far left. Okay. We're in Asia in the jungle, and we're in a clearing. We just come back from 2 weeks. All right. I knew just about everything about those men. If Michael Hussey, who's in the bottom, he's the third one from the left, if he was going to move forward, I could almost feel him do it. Elliot knows what I'm talking about. If you ever played a team sport and a guy's breaking for the basket, you know he's getting ready to do it. And that ball is already there. You worked as a team, okay? We knew each other forward and backwards. We all joined the Marine Corps, volunteered. We all, thank you guys. That was like, I was sweating like it was going out of style. But anyway, we all knew each other. We all knew how to follow orders. We all never complained. Now we complain to each other like, man, it's uncomfortable, okay? There's nothing comfortable about the jungle, all right? It's not like Gilligan's Island. There's nothing like Gilligan's Island. I just dated myself. So the jungle is uncomfortable. So you gripe among each other, but in front of command, we're not griping like these people were. We're not complaining like these people were. Would you bring us out here to the jungle so we could starve? No, of course not. Thank you, guys. Now we're going to get into Joshua.
Come on, brother. Come on, brother.
Okay, Joshua 1 through 8. The word of God. After the death of Moses, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, who has served Moses. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you and all the people prepare to cross over to Jordan to the land I am giving the Israelites. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I promised Moses. Your territory will be from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great Euphrates River, all the land of the Hittites and west to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. I will be with you just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you will distribute the land I swore to your fathers to give them as an inheritance. Above all, be strong and very courageous, to carefully observe the whole instruction my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you will have success wherever you go. This book of instruction must not depart from your mouth. You are to recite it day and night, so that you may carefully observe everything written in it. For then you will prosper and succeed in whatever you do. Haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. If that's not motivating, all right, that doesn't make you, believe you can just scale mountains. The thing I took away was that, Joshua had a just do it attitude like Nike. All right, there's no, well, I'm slow of speech, I have a stuttering problem, people aren't going to believe me. He was told to be courageous, and he just did it. He didn't have any excuses. Now, unlike his mentor, who I'm sure complained, all the time, and probably had plenty of excuses. And Moses, by the way, is revered in the Bible. You don't really see a lot of places that talk about Joshua, who actually laid waste to the promised land and fulfilled what Moses, what God had promised Moses. But you do hear a lot about Moses, but not so much about Joshua. But he just had to do it. Okay, I'm just going to do it. God commanded it, and I'm just going to do it. Do we do that as Christian men? Or I got plenty of excuses. I mean, I have a whole bookshelf of the decades I've been on this earth that just have excuses in it. And when I need one, I just pluck it down. Oh man, I want to think about something impure. I had a bad day. There's my excuse, but we just do it. And God wants us to do what he wants us to do. And we just need to have an attitude that we're going to go ahead and do it. Be strong and courageous. How do we fail to do this as men? And I focus on men. I'm a very male-centric kind of guy. I had a very strong dad. He had a very strong character. So I'm very male-centric. As men, we're leaders. Okay, the world expects us to lead. So when he says be strong and be courageous, are we that way with our sin? I know I'm not. I'm not courageous when it comes to being aggressive with my own sin. I'm a coward at times, and I allow myself to fall victim and fall into sin time and time again. All right. So I'm not courageous. I'm not brave when it comes to my sin. My capabilities. How many people sit out there in the pew and they have the voice of an angel? Okay. But they're afraid. They have a real fear of coming up here One, I think, Eric's, too hard on the corner. I've heard some, the verbal abuse and Keith. I mean, just muscling people. He just like, I think you're a baritone, bro. I'm like, whoa, man, had me in the bath. Hey, man. I say, okay. So twisting people's arms, no. But your capabilities, we're here to use our gifts to serve God. Are we brave and courageous? Are we getting up here and doing things that we do not want to do? And our attitude also on the job and in life. All right. How many times have I been around other men and there's a lot of locker room talk going on? Am I brave and courageous enough to walk away? Or to be like, man, listen, I'm a Christian. All right. Or do I sit there and I chime in as well? All right. But we're called as Joshua was, to be brave and be courageous. Okay. We're going to go into Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, when they spy out the land. Second slide, please. Don't worry, it's only 2. I don't have a fancy dancing movie. I should have got a movie. Like who? Keith had a movie. Who else had a movie? Alex had a movie. I have nothing like that. Right there, we're getting ready to go to a place where we're gonna do some surveillance on some individuals. We're being taught there how to carry, how can I put this in church? How to carry specific tools that we could defend ourselves with. And if we're caught with those things, hook people up and not in a good way. But what I learned there is when I was reading this about spying out the land. And I got a lot of questions about that. We got taught 2 things that was fundamental, and that is you don't want to trigger anybody, and you want a baseline, meaning that you want to dress like everyone else dresses. All right, like your button down or comfortable shorts and and tennis shoes. If I walked through that door wearing a diaper, combat boots, and a cape, I'm gonna trigger something in somebody. Well, if we read Joshua 2, 1 through 8. It says, Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men as spies from Acacia Grove, saying, go and scout the land, especially Jericho. So they left and they came to the house of a woman, a prostitute named Rahab, and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelite men have come here tonight to investigate the land. And then the king of Jericho sent word to Rahab and said, bring out the men who came to you and enter your house, for they came to investigate the entire land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. So she said, yes, the men did come to me, but I didn't know where they were from. At nightfall, when the gate was about to close, the men went out, and I don't know where they, where they were going. Chase after them quickly, and you can catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them among the stalks of flax, so that she had arranged on the roof. The men pursued them along the road to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as they left to pursue them, the gate was shut. So obviously, when they went to send out their recon team, the last place I'm gonna go, and I got Alex always says, put yourself there. So I'll put myself there, okay? And I think, would I go to a prostitute's house, okay, to scout out the land of this place? So probably not. So it just makes me think that, and once again, by the way, the name of my, my lesson is, it's the power of God. Because this whole plan they planned to do was failing from beginning to end. But it taught me that God can use anyone to accomplish his plans, even a prostitute. Okay. And that we sometimes can kind of turn our back on people and base things on how they look or their appearance or their former profession. And in this case, prostitute. But it's just, as Christian men, we got to keep that in mind, that God has a plan. Once again, he knows the end from the beginning, and we got to let this plan play out. Would I have gone to a prostitute's house to kind of scout the land? Probably not. A lot of foot traffic there. Definitely guys from the local guys are hanging out. That's probably how they got spotted. The Bible doesn't say, because I don't think Joshua would have sent them there. So maybe they were like, this is the way I think. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe they were thinking like, we are in town. Let's go ahead and, have a good time. So, but once again, God can use, you can mess up, but God can still use anyone to accomplish his will. Amen. All right. Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, you could have done it from the window. They could have probably done something from the window. And it was advantageous because later on you'll see where they actually rappelled down the side of the wall and broke contact. The promise to Rahab. We're going to look at Joshua 2, still verse 8 through 20. Before the men fell asleep, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, that the dread of you has fallen on us, and everyone who lives in the land is panicking because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings, you completely destroyed across the Jordan. When we heard this, we lost heart and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will also show kindness to my family because I show kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all who belong to them and save us from death. Just a moment. Because I'm thinking about during this time period, as she's telling them that, that everyone is afraid of you. Sometimes God goes ahead of us to make things happen in our lives, and we don't even know it. It could be a job interview. It could be something that's, small to us, but God, through our prayers, has already sent someone ahead of us to make sure that this thing is accomplished. But we got to have faith. And we got to believe that it's actually going to happen, if that makes any sense. The men answered her, we will give our lives for yours. If you don't report our mission, we will show kindness and faithfulness to you when the Lord gives us the land. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, since she lived in a house that was built into the wall of the city. Go to the hill country so that the men pursuing you won't find you. She said to them, hide yourselves there for 3 days until they return afterwards. Go on your way. The man said to her, we will be free from this oath you made us swear, unless when we enter the land, you tie a scarlet cord to the window through which you let us down. Bring your father, mother, brother, and all your father's family into the house. If anyone goes out the doors of your house, his blood will be on his own head, and we will be innocent. But if anyone with you in the house should be harmed, his blood will be on our heads. And if you report our mission, we are free from the oath you made us swear. His promise to Rahab. What is amazing to me is that Rahab could have gave these guys up. I mean, that's the fear that God had put into these people. That Rahab could have given these men up at any time. This is a prostitute. I mean, I'm not knocking prostitutes, but it's not probably somebody who, anyway. But she didn't break her word. Neither did the men of Israel break their word. Now, when they go into the promised land, we're going to go there in a bit. They could have just completely laid waste to her and her family. But these were honored. These were men that were bound. They were oath-bound men. Do we keep our promises to our families, to ourselves, in our Christian walk? Hey, I'm going to maintain my purity. I'm going to fight to make sure that I volunteer more in church. You tell somebody something and then you just don't follow through with it. Okay. Let's be men that follow through. I don't know if that makes any sense. All right. Because people are watching, believe me, they are. Yeah, she could have given them up. Okay, we're gonna go to Joshua 3, 14 and 17. And basically, this is when Joshua, as you were, let's go do, yes, yeah. Basically, this is when Joshua actually goes and he's getting ready to cross the Jordan. And we all know the story, in that the priests carry the ark, and when they step foot right there on the bank, and a la Moses, and this wouldn't have been lost on Joshua, by the way. The people who he had with him, it would have been, because their relatives died in the desert due to their disobedience. But to Joshua, this wouldn't have been lost on him at all. He'd have been like, I know what God's doing. And of course, the water stacked up and they were able to cross over on dry ground. Word of this would have gone like wildfire throughout that region with the Israelites, that the Israelites are coming. But what really stood out to me, and I can kind of do the opposite, is that Joshua wasn't jealous that it was only the Jordan. He didn't go like, well, okay, Moses had the Red Sea, I got a puddle. Okay, I got just this little, and we can do that. We can look at other people's miracles and be like, well, how come that's not working in my life? How come I didn't get that Red Sea crossing type miracle? Okay. And as men of God, we have to look at ourselves and say, hey, God's working. This is a race that we do together, but we all have our own individual struggles. Okay. Maybe God allows you to reach a whole group of people, but me takes away impurity in my heart. I can't look at your blessing and want that. I have to look at what God's doing in my own life. Which is what I need, and that's take away my some impurities I'm working with. So we can't be jealous and look at someone else's blessing. And also they've set up memorial stones. Once they crossed over and everybody was across, then they all set up memorial stones to remember. And I thought about that. Do we have memorial stones in our own life? We forget miracles. We do. I mean, God has pulled us through some things, man, and we forget about them. I have things in my house specifically set up to remind me that God pulled you through that. And when a day gets tough or a day gets hard, it's kind of look at that. A buddy of mine's, Chris Buck, he had this picture of him, and he's sitting, there's a stacked sandbags behind him, and he's got a Marlboro. I'm sorry, he smokes. I don't. He had a Marlboro hanging out of his mouth, and he's got paint all over, candy paint. And he's sitting there with another Marine. I go, Chris, why do you always carry that picture around, man? It's ridiculous. Why? He goes, man, that's the worst day of my life. Worst day of my life. And I'm here. So when things get bad, that was his memorial stone. He would look and go, man, I'm not in that place. So what memorial stone do we have that we have set up that when things get hard, when I want to give into that impurity at 2 a.m. and I want to go on this dumb device I carry around my pocket like a brick and look at something impure, what memorial stone in my mind or my heart that I can look at that takes away that temptation? That make any sense? Amen. So that's Chris Buck. Give him a shout out. I hope he's still alive. Let's go to let's get Joshua, and we're going to look at let's go Joshua 5, verse 1 through 9. And basically with this right here, I mean, once again, it just goes back to what I was saying about this being the hand of God. You can read that, peruse that. It's pretty interesting portion, because now Joshua is required to take a flint knife and circumcise the men of Israel prior to combat. That's not what I want to do before combat. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that prior to something that feels good, let alone facing combat. But this is the hand of God, not man. Me personally, Joshua's not coming anywhere near me with that flint knife. Okay, we're gonna roar. He better be the size of Keith, and it better be multiple guys. Like, hey, Preston, it's time, and not for a circumcision, buddy. It's time for something else. I'll go into war with you. I'll go to battle with you. I'll go do all that, but you're not coming near me with that flint knife. I don't care what my family did in the past. But once again, what did they do? They just did it. And but that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I'm serious, man. In my mind, when I read that, I was like, you know, I hope they're Keith and they had a great big breakfast with juice and toast and milk and a hammer, because you're not coming near me with that flat knife. But as I read that, I said, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. Yep, you gotta man up. You gotta man up. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. And then he had to recover. And then after they recover, then you're gonna go into combat. That was my combat. I'm going nowhere now. I'm just gonna sit around in a diaper for a while. Okay. I mean, it's amazing to me how God made this work. It just shouldn't have worked. You go into a prostitute's house to do recon. You get caught. Now you get back to base camp. You guys did a great job. You're here just in time for the circumcision. You're going to recover, and then you're going to go to war. You're going to go to war. Only God made this work, man. I'm telling you, read it. No, that's buddy. Today's military. Well, I'd have been right there with him. You're not coming near me, Moses. I can say it in Hebrew with that flint knife. Okay, but anyway. Also, we're going to look at the commander. Anybody ever read this and you wonder like about the commander of the Lord's army? Okay, this is in Joshua 5, and it starts in verse 13. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua approached him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied. "I have now come as commander of the Lord's army." Then Joshua bowed with his face to the ground in worship and asked him, "What does my Lord want to say to his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. That wouldn't have been lost on Joshua either. All right, who else was asked to do that? You know, Moses, his mentor. Okay, so now I've crossed over. I don't have a Red Sea, but I do have the Jordan. All right, and I'm being asked to remove my sandals because, you know, this place is holy. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. The commander of the Lord's army. And then brief overview of the conquest of Jericho. We all know the story. We're going to start. Oh, actually, I can just tell you this way. They're being required an attack element. He has split his elements up into an attack element. Then he has the ark. Then he has the priest. And then he has the reserves. And they're going to get up every morning, and the priest, 7 of them, are going to blow the horn, and they're going to circle the city once. Then after that, on the last day, they're going to go around the city 7 times, and they're going to blow. And that's when Moses tells the people to shout, and the walls come tumbling down. What struck me is verse 8. We're in chapter 6, verse 8. After Joshua had spoken to the people, 7 priests carrying 7 trumpets before the Lord moved forward. They blew the trumpet. The ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. While the trumpets were blowing, the armed troops went in front of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard went behind the ark. But Joshua had commanded the people, "Do not shout or let your voice be heard. Don't let one word come out of your mouth until the time I say shout. Then you are to shout." So the ark of the Lord was carried around the city, circling it once, then returned to the camp and spent the night there. How many people can believe that these people didn't say a word? They just walked around that city. That's impressive. Because remember, this is Israel. This is not, somebody's complaining about getting cut. I know I would be. I mean, here I'm walking around, man, I just got, circa. I mean, come on, why are we walking? Somebody would be talking, but instead people kept quiet. All right. Once again, the hand of God. Well, yeah, that flint knife, man. That guy wouldn't have flint knife, And sometimes we as Christians, sometimes you have to be quiet and let God do what he's going to do in your life. We talk, man. I can babble, buddy, and complain until the sun goes down. Sometimes you have to be quiet. Further on in chapter verse 20, so the people shouted and trumpets sounded. When they heard the blast of the trumpet, the people gave a great shout and the wall collapsed. The people advanced into the city, each man straight ahead, and they captured the city. They completely destroyed everything in the city with the sword, every man, woman, both young and old, and every ox, sheep, and donkey. When I read that, it reminds me that, and this is gonna, I hope it comes across the right way. And that is that our God's not mocked. We need to remember who we serve.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to remember the light and fluffy, version of God. Somebody out there in the world will tell you in a heartbeat, God's a God of love. God's a God of, but you need to remember, everyone, caught some steel in that city. All right. We need to remember who we serve. And God's not mocked. We need to serve him with reverence because God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same God that ordered Joshua to do this in that city is the same God we serve today. All right. He's not God light. He's not like light beer. Okay, like my British friends say, what's the point, mate? What's the point? Light beer. So he's that same God. He's the same God. We're gonna go on and finish up here. The defeat at Ai. Now, this is one of Joshua's weaknesses that I thought was interesting because Moses was not this way, but Joshua was. And that is, he would not inquire of God sometimes. And he took it in the shorts because he just wouldn't inquire of God, should I do this thing? So they're going against the city of Ai. Wasn't very populated, but everyone in that city was a warrior pretty much. So when he goes out to Ai, he sends out a recon team. The recon team comes back and says, since the people of Ai are so few, don't wear out all our people there. So only about 3,000 men went. Okay. So of course, if he had inquired of God, what would God have told him? Said, I'm not going to hand them into you. Someone has done something in the camp against me. Do not go to war with them. But Joshua doesn't listen. And what does he do? He goes out there and gets his lunch eaten. They get crushed by the men of Ai. And then of course, Joshua comes back and we're going to be in chapter 7, verse 6. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell before the ark of the Lord with his face to the ground until evening, as did the elders of Israel. They all put dust on their heads. O Lord, Joshua said, why didn't you ever bring these people across the Jordan to hand us over to the Ammonites for our destruction? Only we have been content to remain on the other side of the Jordan. What can I say, Lord, now that Israel has turned its back and run from its enemies? When the Canaanites and all who live in the land hear about this, they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. Then what will you do about your great name? Sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's just like other Israelites, if only we had stayed over there on that side. What really stood out to me about this is inquire of God. Inquire of God. If you're getting ready to go do something, inquire of God. What does God want you to do? And then get some counseling from older brothers. If I quit my job and just decided that I'm going to go down Virginia Beach Boulevard and open up a pickle stand with my savings with a guy named Jose of questionable character, okay? Just quit my job and do that, all right? Like people eat pickles like that. Like I'm driving my car and like, man, I want a pickle. There's Preston and Jose. No one does that ever, right? But when it goes south and you didn't inquire of God, what do? We do exactly what what Joshua did. I'm gonna be like, oh man, all my money's in pickles. What am I gonna do? I can't pay rent. Well, whose fault is that, Preston? If I had went to God and prayed and then talked to Neil or Keith or Elliot, or Brian, Brian, his buddy is blunt. Your old man is blunt. He does not play games. He looked at me, he put his hand, said, Gunny, that's stupid. But instead, I'm gonna go out and buy me, pickles. I guess Jose gets some, and then I'm gonna sit up down Virginia Beach Boulevard and say, what's gonna happen? But I'm gonna throw dust on my hand, tear my shirt, do all this stuff, right? But it's my fault. Like Eugene said, he said, man, inquire of God. When it goes bad, you take it in the short. That's on you. Then God later on, and I love the way our Lord is, because we all need a man like this in our life that just kick you right in the knee, kind of. I love it. In 10, after all that complaining, the Lord said, the Lord then said to Joshua, stand up. Why are you on the ground? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant that I appointed for them. They have taken some of what has been set apart. They have stolen and deceived, put the things with their own belongings. This is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They will turn their backs and run from their enemies because they have been set apart for destruction. I will no longer be with you unless you remove from you what is set apart. So he's, we have to be men that we don't take pity on ourselves, man. We don't take pity. No sob, sad story. Save that for your wife or your girlfriend. Say that violin for them. Honey, no, my dad used to say, what's that, boy? What's that? What, daddy? That's the world's smallest violin playing just for you. Now do it. I don't care about your sob, sad story. All right, no one does. I'm playing just for that. Say that for your youngins, whatever. But no pity party, not on yourself, And get your head up. If you do take one, all right, why you face down, I understand if maybe it was a Jewish tradition to prone yourself up, but get your head up. My dad hated that. I'm running, after I run, I walk like this. He said, boy, get your head up. And I snap my head straight up. Be a man. That's what we are. We're men. Men. No pity party. Like I said, say that for the females in your life. And then I mean that, man. Say that for the females in your life. Hey, honey, I'm sorry. Hey, honey, I didn't mean to do that. Peaches, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Say that for them, man. They'll buy that song and dance. Not yourself. Crush yourself. Be hard on you. Anyway, Chen was a guy that had taken the gold and the silver and everything like that, and he hid it with his own stuff. Everything was to be destroyed. God's not ambiguous. Okay, go there, put everybody to the sword, and dedicate everything that's there. That's what he means. Okay, he's not us. He's not a man. Maybe he's changed his mind, but he didn't do it. He kept it. And then you see later on. You see what happened to his family. I'll read. You don't have to go there. It's going to be 7 verse 24. Then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver, the cloak, and the bar of gold, his sons and daughters, his ox, his donkey, his sheep, his tent, and all that he had, and brought them up to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, why have you troubled us today? The Lord will trouble you. So all Israel stoned him to death. They burnt their bodies, threw stones on them, and raised over them a large pile of rocks that remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his burning anger there, for that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. And what that tells me, man, is that, it's across the board. You can look at any society. You can go back, or you can go in this society. Weak, immoral men destroy families. Weak, immoral men destroy family. This man, because of his sin, caused his whole family to sin. And then they ought to be destroyed. Okay, as Christian warriors, as Christian men of God, we're called for higher. Okay, we're called for more. We're not called for once again, God's not ambiguous. We don't care. He doesn't care about your excuses. We're not called to sin. And men who allow themselves to fall in sin and immorality, that's a weakness, and eventually will affect your family and destroy your family. Period. All right, bring it home. Bring it home, bring it home, bring it home, bring it home. All right, we're gonna look at finally, okay, the unconquered lands. I don't know what happened, but Joshua, for whatever reason, did not. There were certain lands, chapter 13, go there and look it up yourself. But he didn't conquer those lands. Those lands went unconquered, and you would see later on that's going to come back and bite them. And then last but not least, we're going to look at what Joshua said at the end. Okay, this is going to be in chapter, if I can remove my sticky note, please bear with me. Okay, it's going to be in this chapter 24. It's going to be the covenant renewal. We're going to go down to 14. This is kind of Joshua's farewell, not farewell, yeah, he's going to die soon. So his farewell address to the people of Israel. They've conquered the Holy Land. They've either, like some of the people there, they've either, like Gibeon, they've either been forced into forced labor or they've been completely destroyed. He, for the most part, has done what God has asked him to do. Unlike his mentor in a lot of ways, this is kind of like his farewell's address. Therefore, fear the Lord and worship him in sincerity and truth. Get rid of the gods your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and worship the Lord. But if it doesn't please you to worship the Lord, choose for yourselves today the one you will worship. The gods your fathers worshiped beyond the Euphrates River, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. As for me and my family, we will worship the Lord. And that's powerful. I mean, man, it's up to us. A society is never going to rise above the morality of its men. Women aren't going to do it. Okay, it's never going to do it. A society will never rise above the morality of its men. Strong Christian moral men are going to lead this country, this world, okay, to a better place. Weak and immoral men destroy themselves and their families. All right, across the board. You know, being a man in itself, but being a man is not easy. If being a man was easy, women would do it. But it's not. Okay, it's not easy. It's not easy being a man, right? So as men, especially Christian men, we need to rely on God. We need to rely on God, not on ourselves. We need to go to God, and we need to pray continuously. And as I just say, stay in the Word of God. Amen. That's all I got.